1 year ago, Najib Razak took over as Prime Minister here in Malaysia. Now he's announced a new economic model, saying he'll reduce the preferential treatment currently given to the majority Malays at the expense of the minority Indian and Chinese communities. It's a bold move aimed at attracting much-needed foreign investment and winning back disgruntled voters. I'm Ibrahim. On this edition of 101 East, we speak with Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak about the challenges facing his nation. Many Malaysians consider Prime Minister Najib Abdul Razak political blue blood. He is the son of the nation's second Prime Minister and the nephew of the third, so it seems only fitting that he took over the reins at a time of national political uncertainty.
Saya Muhammad Najib bin Tun Najib Razak dengan sesungguhnya bersumpah bahawa saya tidak akan
In March 2008, the ruling coalition, Barisan Nasional, was left reeling from major election losses. The dominant party, the United Malays National Organisation, or UMNO in particular, lost ground to opposition groups. 1 year later, party leader, then Prime Minister Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, resigned, paving the way for his deputy Najib Razak to take over. The new Prime Minister promised to address the grievances of minority groups, many of whom chose to support the opposition in the polls. One major issue that's often threatened national unity here is the national economic policy. Implemented in 1971, the affirmative action policy gave majority Malays preferential access to higher education, new housing development, civil service jobs and business opportunities. But after nearly 4 decades, many have questioned the effectiveness of the scheme. Now, Prime Minister Najib is seeking to correct the general perception that the policy has led to a sense of entitlement amongst the Malays.
For too long, the implementation of our affirmative action policies have not reached those who needed them the most. We can no longer tolerate practices that support the behavior of rent-seeking and patronage. So, there will be a renewed affirmative action policy in the new economic model, with a focus on raising income levels of all disadvantaged groups. It will focus on the needs of our people.
The Prime Minister promises the NEM, as it is popularly known, will be inclusive and beneficial to all Malaysians. It's all part of his One Malaysia concept, an effort to erase long-standing ethnic lines and build trust and respect. But he is facing opposition from Malay groups who fear they will be robbed of their special privileges, as stated in the Constitution.
The government should not be carried away by this present political scenario. Whatever the government want to do, as far as if it's good for the country, go ahead. But don't forget, the Malays and indigenous people who command the majority population of this country are still being marginalized and still backward. If the majority is not happy, in the future you cannot guarantee the national unity.
Many agree that addressing the nation's social and economic imbalance puts Prime Minister Najib and his political party in a difficult position.
For the ruling party, he has to walk a tightrope on this issue. He has also to bring to bear its economic policy on the normalists, while at the same time retaining its earlier role, its traditional role of championing the cause of the Malays.
Prime Minister Najib's first year in office has been tested by rising racial and religious tensions. In November last year, activists protested what they claim was the government's use of the Internal Security Act to silence opposing voices. But Malay groups defended the act, saying it was needed to keep in line anyone questioning the Constitution's statement of special privileges for the majority Malays. The government calmed both sides by promising to set up a committee to review the ISA. And in January this year, Malay Muslim groups were up in arms over a Catholic church's use of the word Allah in their texts. The Prime Minister was once again tested over the issue of Malay superiority and dominance. He condemned the attacks against churches and appealed for calm. But the events have thrown doubts as to whether Prime Minister Najib is able to address his people's deep-seated grievances.
This can only be shown in the next election. But for one thing, I can assure that if there is going to be an expanding economic cake which allows everybody, Malays and non-Malays, to benefit out of it, then probably he is on a safer course.
Until then, Prime Minister Najib will have to continue walking a fine line in an effort to unite his divisive nation. Joining us now on 101 East is Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak. Sir, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
In your outline for the new economic model, you emphasize inclusiveness in the plan for all races. But you've also kept the affirmative action for the Bumiputras, which is made up of about 53% of Malays and 12% of the indigenous people. But then you've also said the affirmative action in your plan is different to the ones from previous. What's so different about it?
It's different because we've learned from implementing the affirmative action in the past. We know where the weaknesses are.
Well, what are the weaknesses?
Well, I think basically, we have to change the way we implement it so that it is more attuned with the current market, especially the market expectations that it should be market friendly. It should be based on merit. It should be more transparent. And it should also be on needs basis. And I've emphasized that we have to be fair. When we implement affirmative action, it means for the Bumiputra. And when we say Bumiputra, it's not just for the Malays. It must also include the other indigenous people, especially in Sabah and Sarawak.
Well, there has been criticism that the way it's been implemented has been corrupted, has been abused in the past. Would you agree with that?
There have been shortcomings, yes. I'm not entirely disappointed with the results. I think if you look at it across the board, I mean, a new generation of Bumiputras have emerged. The entire middle class, for example, would not be there if not for the new economic policy, and quite a number of Bumiputras in the corporate field managing huge enterprises with a great sense of confidence now.
There is no doubt that some Bumiputras have definitely benefited from the plan itself. But there are some who sort of say, after nearly 40 years of affirmative action, why is there still a need for affirmative action for the Malays and the indigenous people?
It's because the goals have not been fully achieved, number one. Number two, in an unbridled capitalistic market economy, without some degree of affirmative action, then you will get this marginalization to appear once again. And that's going to be quite catastrophic for our society, because our society is predicated on stability. I think stability is a bedrock in terms of where Malaysia has come from in the past. We went through a very painful experience. Stability? I'm talking about political and racial. I mean, racial stability is part of political stability. And that's so important, because if you have stability, it benefits all.
Many people have said that the affirmative action has led to a generation of Malays who feel that they are entitled to these special privileges. There are some minority groups who feel sidelined. They feel second class because of the affirmative action. These are what the critics are saying about the affirmative action. Do you really think that there is still a need for affirmative action? Why not just make it, affirmative action for all races?
Well, when I said that it should be implemented in a fairer way, I mean, if you talk about affirmative action, then it should benefit, 65% of the population, right? And then there's, of course, the non-Bumi Putras, and you must have programs for them as well. And because they are in a market economy, if you promote private sector investment, for example, and opportunities for the private sector, and naturally the non-Bumi Putras will benefit from it. So to say that we have excluded the non-Bumi Putra from government policy is entirely wrong.
But there has been some opposition from Malay rights groups who fear that perhaps these special privileges, their rights may be taken away from them as well.
No, I didn't say they'll be taken away.
Well,
They've
this is what they fear.
Yeah,
this is what they're saying. This is what
them.
Perkasa is saying.
Yeah, but Perkasa is not so extreme if you listen to them carefully. They can shout about what Malay rights for as long as they're not extreme in their views. And to the extent that we can accommodate Perkasa, we can accommodate also the non-Malays as well. I do engage the non-Malay groups as well. So as Prime Minister, I've always said I'm Prime Minister for all Malaysians.
But Perkasa has said that, as the group that represents the Malay groups that fear their special privileges may be taken away from them, they have said that, in the next election, they may not support UMNO because of the actions that you may be taking.
No, that's not true. They are by and large supportive of UMNO, and they believe that UMNO is the only vehicle that can really not only promote Malay interests, but really hold this country together. I think UMNO is a strong party. UMNO is well established. UMNO can deal with the emergence of Perkasa as well as other groups as well.
Prime Minister, we're going to have to take a break there. When we come back, we'll have more when we speak with Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak. Stay with 101 East. Welcome back to 101 East. This week we are talking with Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak as he completes his first year in office. Prime Minister, you've introduced the concept of One Malaysia. What is One Malaysia to you?
One Malaysia is about a sense that we are together as one people, as one nation. And I've said that it is based, it's predicated on a change in mindset, and the very minimum would be tolerance. In other words, you tolerate one another, the differences, racial differences, religious differences, you tolerate. But that is a basic minimum. Then we go on to the next stage, which is to accept it. You accept diversity as something good for the country. That's the next echelon, if you like, in terms of value system, in terms of mindset. And ultimately, the final, if you like, will be to celebrate diversity. I mean, if you celebrate diversity, means you're entirely comfortable with a notion of a multiracial, multireligious society.
But surely, sir, after 50 years of independence, Malaysia needs to be taught how to live harmoniously?
Absolutely.
Why? Why? After 5 decades of independence?
Come on, look what happened in Europe. I mean, Yugoslavia broke up, okay? You have problems in Northern Ireland. You have extremists even in America. You have modern-day Ku Klux Klan as well in America, okay? There are extremists in any society, and including us. And the very fact that there are some extremists in our society means you need one Malaysia.
Well, you also lead a party that champions Malay rights, Malay needs, Malay interests, and you're also trying to push the agenda of a united Malaysia.
It's
Do
not
you
a zero-sum
yourself see
game.
the irony in this?
Game. It's not. It's a reality. It's not a zero-sum game, because if you promote interests of Malays, it's not at the exclusion of the non-Malays. I think there's enough resources for us to help everyone in this country. And I think I'm confident, in fact, with the policies based on the spirit and the philosophy of One Malaysia, that everyone will have a rightful place under the Malaysian sun.
But you can't get away from the fact that Malaysia runs on race-based politics.
Yeah, well, that's history. I mean, I cannot change history overnight. I have to take it from where it is, or where it was when I took over, and slowly get Malaysians to be together in this journey.
How long do you think it'll
Malaysia.
take before Malaysia can be rid of race-based politics? Before someone stops seeing somebody as a Malay or an Indian or a Chinese and says that they are Malaysian first?
It's an evolution. It's a change in mindset. You cannot legislate. You cannot make laws. It's a change in mindset, and I think it might take a bit of time, but for as long as we live in a peaceful, harmonious society, it doesn't matter. You can be a Malay or a Chinese or Indian, but as long as you believe that you are a Malaysian.
Let me then just ask you, are you a Malay first and a Malaysian second?
Well, technically, if you talk about the constitution, I'm a Malay, but I'm comfortable being a Malay in a Malaysian society, and I want us to work towards becoming a truly one Malaysia society. But I'm proud to be a Malay. I'm proud to be a Muslim. But the fact that I'm proud to be a Malay and a Muslim, it doesn't mean that I cannot relate to others.
However, there is this large group of Malays who feel that with you pushing that, they do feel that special privileges, that their rights may be trampled upon.
I've never said I'm going to change the constitution. I never said that. I said one Malaysia is predicated on the constitution of Malaysia. And the constitution, has provision to protect Malay special rights. And those things will be in the constitution.
But some people have said that it is that statement in the constitution that is the basis for the social and racial problems that are in Malaysia today, that make the Chinese, the Indians feel sidelined.
No, I think it's the way you implement things. And if you implement things in a fairer way, you can reach out, to the Malays, to the non-Malays as well. Don't forget, when we implemented the new economic policy back in the 70s and 80s, and even in the 90s before the Asian financial crisis, it coincided with the growth rates of Malaysia being at breakneck speed. 8-9% was the norm in those days. So new economic policy, affirmative action, has never really hampered the growth of Malaysia into a modern economy.
There are critics who have accused UMNO of becoming arrogant, self-indulgent after over 50 years of being in power, and that UMNO has lost touch with the ground sentiment. Take, for example, the last elections. UMNO did lose a lot of seats in those elections. UMNO has also lost the last 8 out of 10 by-elections as well. Is UMNO still relevant in Malaysia?
Of course, I truly believe so.
But has it lost touch with the ground?
To some extent, that's true. But, it's a party that's been in power for so long. So the challenge is for us to present UMNO as a progressive, dynamic party, and not for us to be in this kind of a syndrome that we're too complacent, or we feel that whatever we do, we're going to get the support of the people. I keep on telling people that if we don't change, we'll be changed by the people. I'm very frank, and I admit we have shortcomings, because otherwise we wouldn't have done badly. But in the international context, people would love to have the kind of majority we have in Parliament.
I want to go back and talk about the NEM, which you are trying to implement to try to attract more foreign investment in Malaysia, to make Malaysia a more globally competitive economy. But many financial analysts have been rather lukewarm in their response to your recent outline, and they are actually pointing to more deep-seated problems like a perceived lack of judicial independence in the country, a seemingly growing rise in Islamic fundamentalism, and they also point to the fact that Malaysia has slid down the corruption index. Last year, in 2008, you were at 47. In 2009, you found yourself at 56. How do you change these perceptions?
Metaphorically, I've described this like a facade of a house. You have the roof, which is the overarching philosophy of One Malaysia, people first, performance now. Then you have the two pillars. One is the government transformation program, the one is economic transformation program. And you have the floor, which is the 10th and 11th Malaysian plans. So the government transformation program is designed to address, and one of the issues is corruption, to reduce corruption and reduce the crime rate in Malaysia, plus the other, altogether six key result areas. So we've recognized it, and this is work in progress. It's too early, it is work in progress, but I'm generally quite happy with the progress thus far.
While you're implementing the NEM to try to attract foreign investors and to try to boost their confidence in Malaysia, the world is also watching very closely the trial of Anwar Ibrahim. How do you think this trial is affecting Malaysia on the international stage?
Well, I think we have to make people understand that it's not the Malaysian government against Anwar Ibrahim, okay? This is not a political trial. It's about a young, not intern, but a young officer chosen by him in his office, a 22-year-old man who feel very aggrieved, made a police report against his employer, and that was the genesis of the present case. It's got nothing to do with government. If that person did not make a police report, there would be no case against Anwar Ibrahim. So,
but you can't get away from the fact that this is the second time Anwar Ibrahim is going to court, and it seems like it is being compared to the previous case.
Shouldn't, because this is a message we're telling. It's not the same as the first trial. This is an individual in his own office, appointed by him, who has felt very strongly that he has been made to do certain things that he found totally unacceptable, made a police report, and investigation was launched. And as you know, under the law, whether it is Saiful or whether it's Anwar Ibrahim, everybody has the same right under the law.
Do you think the first case was political?
I don't think it was political, the first case, but there was maybe lack of corroborative evidence, if you like. And I think this case, I wouldn't like to comment on it because it would be considered sub judice. But we want it to be a fair process. We want to be transparent, and the Malaysian government knows that at the end of the day, we're going to be judged. International is one thing, but the people in Malaysia will judge us. So we realize that.
You come from political aristocracy. What do you think your legacy will be?
I haven't gone that far yet to think. I don't think I want to put the what do you call the cart before the horse. I think what I like to do is to get on with, the four pillars that I mentioned as part of our main agenda of the government, and let the people judge me in time to come.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for speaking with us. And that's all the time we have for this edition of 101 East. From all the team here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, thanks for watching.